Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that everyone around you is living inside an illusion, and you're the only one who can see through it. You watch them chase approval, drown in distractions, worship comfort, and call it happiness. You see them arguing over trivial things, competing for validation, pretending they understand life while being ruled by everything they refuse to confront. You want to shake them awake, but you realize most people don't want truth. They want anesthesia. Because truth is painful, it tears down the stories that make us feel safe, the stories that tell us the world is fair, that people mean well, that effort always pays off. But life doesn't bend to our expectations. It reveals itself to those ruthless enough to look without flinching. That kind of awareness is dangerous. Not the kind of danger that harms others, but the kind that makes you untouchable. Because once you see clearly, no one can manipulate you. You stop chasing illusions. You stop begging for fairness. You start moving through the world with quiet precision. Calm, unreactive, impossible to deceive. This isn't intelligence the schools teach you. It's not about test scores or degrees. It's dangerous intelligence, the ability to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. It's the kind of perception that turns pain into power and chaos into clarity. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome and student of suffering, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That sentence hides a revolution. It means that while others are prisoners of their emotions, expectations, and impulses, you can walk free. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop demanding it to. You stop blaming, stop reacting, stop clinging to things outside your control. You rise above the noise. But here's the cost. Once you start seeing clearly, you can never go back. You'll notice how people use emotion instead of reason. You'll see self-interest hiding behind every mask of generosity. You'll watch how truth terrifies most minds, how they will attack you for saying what they secretly know is true. You'll realize your success will expose their insecurities. You'll see how comfort destroys potential. And finally, you'll understand the ultimate truth, that death makes almost everything we worry about meaningless. Those who can face these realities without collapsing are rare. Most will call you cold, arrogant, detached. They'll say you've changed, but what really changed is your perception. You stopped playing by invisible rules. You stopped seeking permission to think clearly. To develop this kind of dangerous intelligence, you must be willing to lose your illusions, every comforting belief that keeps you weak. You'll lose the fantasy that people will always be fair. You'll lose the idea that emotions equal truth. You'll lose the expectation that the world owes you peace. But what you gain is infinitely greater: clarity, discipline, and inner power. When you stop being afraid of truth, the world opens up. You start reading people like open books. You sense motives beneath words. You recognize manipulation before it touches you. You no longer react. You respond. You no longer cling. You choose. That's the moment you cross from ordinary intelligence into dangerous intelligence. And once you cross, you never see the world the same way again. Because truth doesn't make you cruel, it makes you clear. It doesn't harden your heart, it sharpens your mind. It doesn't turn you against others, it turns you toward mastery. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus all faced chaos, betrayal, and loss. Yet they stood unbroken, not because life spared them, but because they trained their minds to see through illusion. They built their peace not on circumstances, but on strength of perception. That's the essence of this path. Not a religion, not a trend, but a way of living where reality becomes your teacher and pain becomes your discipline. Because once you learn to see without filters, you gain something unshakable: the ability to remain calm in storms, wise in confusion, and free in a world addicted to lies. If you seek truth more than comfort, if you're ready to see what others refuse to see, then you've already taken your first step. Welcome to True Stoic Way. Lesson 1: Emotion rules the majority. A few years ago, I watched a friend walk into a car dealership, convinced he was going to make a smart investment. He had spreadsheets, research notes, and confidence in his reasoning. 2 hours later, he drove away in a bright red sports car, triple the budget he'd planned. He told everyone it was a strategic decision because it held its value, had excellent safety ratings, and would motivate him to work harder. But the truth was written all over his face. He didn't buy logic. He bought a feeling. The rush of validation, the illusion of success, the dopamine spark of being seen. We all do this. We dress emotion in the language of reason. The brain decides first through the amygdala, the emotional command center, and then lets the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, create a story that sounds intelligent. Neurologists call this the amygdala hijack. In milliseconds, your survival instincts, ego triggers, and desires take over, and logic simply becomes their spokesperson. When you argue, it's not facts that raise your voice. It's fear of losing face. When you buy something you don't need, it's not necessity. It's the dopamine hit of ownership. When you stay in relationships that drain you, it's not loyalty. It's the emotional comfort of familiarity. The human mind, left untrained, is a perfect machine for self-deception. This is why Stoicism is not a philosophy of detachment, but of discipline. The Stoics understood that emotions aren't evil, they're signals. But reacting to every emotion is like handing the steering wheel of your life to a storm. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't tell you to suppress emotion. He told you to separate it from your control. Emotion is the spark, your response is the fire. And between those two lies, freedom. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics intuited centuries ago. Emotions are faster than reason. Before your rational mind even interprets what's happening, your amygdala has already triggered a hormonal response. Adrenaline, cortisol, or dopamine. That's why emotional decisions feel right, they feel alive. But what feels right in the moment often leads to regret later. You've experienced this before, sending a message you wish you hadn't, saying words that can't be unsaid, spending money you didn't have, all in the name of a feeling that faded minutes later. The Stoics would call this enslavement to passion. True mastery doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you notice what you feel before you act. It means creating a pause, a sacred space between stimulus and response, where wisdom can speak louder than impulse. When was the last time you made a decision that felt rational but was really emotional? Think back. The job you quit in anger. The person you dated because they made you feel powerful. The argument you refused to walk away from because your ego was whispering, "Don't let them win." Every one of those moments was a fork in the road, emotion or reason, reactivity or control. And every time you chose the pause, you built a muscle that most people never train. Emotional sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius, leading Rome through war and plague, practiced this constantly. Before every decision, he would write short reminders to himself. Don't be carried away by feeling. Don't be deceived by appearances. Examine the cause. He knew that the first reaction is rarely the right one. Because emotion speaks in the language of urgency. Do something now. While reason whispers, wait. That pause, that breath, that moment of awareness, that is the birthplace of Stoic power. It's the difference between reacting like everyone else and responding like a philosopher warrior. Once you start observing this in others, you'll see it everywhere. The coworker who lashes out in meetings isn't defending logic, they're defending ego. The partner who demands constant reassurance isn't seeking truth, they're soothing insecurity. The influencer preaching authenticity while chasing likes isn't being real, they're addicted to validation. When you see emotion driving behavior, you stop taking things personally. You stop wasting energy debating surface logic when the real battle is happening beneath, in pride, fear, and craving. And that's the dangerous intelligence Stoicism gives you. The ability to see not just what people say, but why they say it. To understand that behind every argument lies a hidden emotional need, to be respected, seen, or right. Address the need, and the noise disappears. If my friend at the dealership had paused for 30 seconds before signing that paper and asked himself, what feeling am I chasing right now? He might have saved himself years of debt. But most people never pause. They obey their emotions like loyal servants and call it being true to themselves. The Stoic is different. He doesn't kill emotion, he commands it. He feels anger but chooses justice. He feels fear but chooses action. He feels desire but chooses discipline. That's not repression, that's rule. If you've learned to pause before reacting, you've already practiced the first Stoic weapon of control. Because emotional control is not coldness, it's clarity. It's what allows you to walk through chaos with calm eyes, to be surrounded by noise but ruled by silence. And in that silence, you find power. Not over others, but over yourself. That's where dangerous intelligence begins. Not in knowing everything, but in mastering the one thing most people never do, your own mind. Lesson 2. Everyone acts in their self-interest. A few years ago, my neighbor Sarah became the perfect example of how human nature always reveals its compass, and that compass points towards self-interest. She was the kind of neighbor everyone admired. She baked cookies for new families, organized community events, and remembered every child's name. People called her generous, kind, even selfless. But a few months later, campaign posters appeared across the neighborhood. Sarah for city council. Suddenly, everything made sense. Every kind gesture, every friendly conversation, every small favor had been a brick in her political foundation. She wasn't faking her kindness, she was channeling it. What looked like pure altruism was, in reality, intelligent self-interest. She understood one of the most powerful principles of social psychology, reciprocity. People are wired to return favors. By giving first, she planted emotional debts she could later harvest as votes. She also understood reputation, another invisible currency. When people perceive you as generous and caring, they want to be associated with you. Your name travels faster, and your influence multiplies. Sarah didn't manipulate people. She mastered human nature. And that's the difference between cynicism and clarity. Once you see this pattern, you realize it's everywhere. The coworker who compliments you before asking for help. The friend who suddenly becomes attentive right before they need a favor. Even parents, lovers, teachers, and mentors, all acting, consciously or not, from what they believe serves their interests. Sometimes those interests are noble, love, respect, connection. Sometimes they're selfish, control, comfort, validation. But the current underneath is the same, self-preservation. You can't fight gravity or human nature. This realization changes the way you see the world. It strips away the moral shock and disappointment that come when people don't act the way you wish they would. Because you stop expecting humans to transcend their design. You stop taking it personally when someone prioritizes themselves. They're just following their nature, the same way a flame burns or water flows downhill. In Lesson 1, we learned that emotion is the engine of human behavior. Self-interest is the direction it drives. Emotions like fear, desire, pride, or guilt become the fuel. Self-interest decides the destination. A person's choices are simply the visible trails of these invisible forces. The Stoics never condemned this truth. They accepted it. Marcus Aurelius served as emperor, leading armies, managing politics, and still found time to write about virtue. He understood that even his service to Rome served his own highest interest, living according to reason and honor. Seneca advised emperors and built wealth, but he did it to secure freedom for his philosophical life. Self-interest isn't evil, it's inevitable. The question isn't whether it drives you, but where you aim it. The untrained mind uses self-interest selfishly, chasing status, comfort, or advantage. The Stoic mind uses self-interest wisely to align with virtue, discipline, and contribution. You don't destroy ego by pretending it doesn't exist. You transform it by giving it a higher mission. Epictetus wrote, "What is the goal of the philosopher? To live as nature wills." Nature itself is self-interested. The lion hunts, the tree reaches for sunlight, the body seeks warmth. None of these acts are immoral, they're necessary. The Stoic simply learns to elevate instinct into intention, to turn raw self-interest into moral alignment. Once you understand this, you can navigate relationships with calm realism. When someone offers help, You no longer assume purity. You look for alignment. What do they gain from helping you? Respect? Gratitude? Cooperation? You recognize it, not to distrust them, but to engage intelligently. Because sustainable relationships are built not on blind faith, but on mutual benefit. Seneca practiced this in politics. He designed every alliance so both sides gained something: wisdom, power, protection, or peace. That's why his partnerships lasted longer than those built on idealism or flattery. He didn't demand people act against their self-interest. He made it serve both their good and his. The truth is, disappointment often comes from our refusal to see this clearly. We expect people to act from pure love, loyalty, or morality, and then feel betrayed when they act human instead. But when you expect self-interest, you stop being surprised. You stop calling people fake. You start calling them predictable. And predictability is power. It means you can anticipate motives, design better agreements, avoid manipulation, and create balance instead of resentment. So, the next time someone compliments you, helps you, or offers advice, don't rush to judge them as sincere or selfish. Instead, ask, what's their interest? Maybe it's mutual growth. Maybe it's approval. Maybe it's just connection. Knowing that doesn't make you colder. It makes you clearer. Remember, clarity doesn't breed distrust. It breeds wisdom. Because understanding self-interest doesn't make you bitter. It makes you strategic. You stop fighting what is and start using it consciously. You learn to align motives, not condemn them. And that's the mark of dangerous intelligence. At True Stoic Way, we don't resent self-interest. We master it. Lesson 3. People can't handle the truth about themselves. My friend Mike was the kind of guy everyone liked. Smart, funny, confident. But every time we talked, he had a complaint. He'd say his boss was unfair, his co-workers were lazy, and that the company never promoted people who actually worked hard. He told the same story so often he started to believe it was a universal truth. Hard work doesn't matter anymore. One evening, after listening for the 100th time, I asked a simple question. Mike, have you ever considered that maybe it's not just your boss? The air froze. His smile vanished. And for the next 5 minutes, I watched him build a fortress of excuses brick by brick. His tardiness, traffic, missed deadlines, unrealistic expectations, conflicts with supervisors. I just stand up for myself. He had a logical shield for every criticism, a masterpiece of self-protection that kept him safe from one terrifying idea. Maybe the problem is me. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort we feel when reality clashes with our self-image. To reduce that discomfort, we twist facts, rewrite memories, and create stories that make us look innocent. It's not that we can't see the truth, it's that our ego refuses to survive it. When faced with painful feedback, the brain deploys ego defense mechanisms faster than any army. We rationalize, deny, project, and blame, because these reactions protect our fragile sense of identity. The same mind that built rockets and wrote poetry also specializes in self-deception. Most people think they want truth. What they really want is reassurance. That's why they surround themselves with people who echo their beliefs, praise their choices, and never challenge their comfort. Growth requires confrontation, and confrontation hurts. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than anyone. He ruled an empire, commanded legions, and still doubted himself daily. But instead of hiding from those doubts, he wrote them down. In the quiet of the night, he opened his soul and dissected his weaknesses with surgical honesty. He asked himself questions that most people run from. Where have I been dishonest today? What impulses have ruled me instead of reason? Did I act for virtue or for vanity? His private notes, now known as meditations, were never meant to be published. They were brutal self-audits, reminders to stay awake to his own flaws. He didn't write to appear wise. He wrote to avoid becoming blind. That's what separates a Stoic from the average person. While most people defend their illusions, the Stoic hunts them down. He knows that the lies you tell yourself are the ones that destroy you quietly. The I'm fine, the they're the problem. The "it's just bad luck." Each one keeps you trapped inside a narrative that feels safe, but slowly kills your potential. Modern Stoics continue this tradition through journaling. Not the performative kind that collects dust, but a daily practice of mental truth-seeking. You sit with your thoughts, strip them bare, and ask, what story am I telling myself today? Where am I making excuses? What emotion am I protecting instead of confronting? It's not an exercise in shame. It's an exercise in freedom. Because every illusion you destroy becomes a doorway to strength. Every truth you face, no matter how painful, returns a piece of your power. Mike never learned that. He kept running from the mirror, wondering why life didn't change. His world shrank to fit the size of his excuses. That's the fate of those who can't handle truth. They end up trapped in their own defense mechanisms. The Stoic does the opposite. He chooses awareness over anesthesia. He'd rather face a hard truth now than live a comfortable lie forever. So ask yourself, what truth about yourself are you avoiding? What feedback are you dismissing too quickly? What pattern keeps repeating because you won't admit your role in it? This is why every Stoic keeps a journal. To confront the lies comfort whispers daily. Because the world will forgive your mistakes, but not your blindness. And until you face yourself honestly, every success, every relationship, every goal will be built on unstable ground. The courage to look inward is the rarest courage of all, because it means standing naked before your own mind and saying, I was wrong. But when you do, something extraordinary happens. The walls fall, the fog clears, and you start to see yourself, not as you wish to be, but as you truly are. And that clarity, painful as it is the beginning of wisdom. Lesson 4. Your success will trigger envy. When my college roommate David launched his tech startup, everyone loved him. Back then, he was the guy who'd help you with assignments at midnight, share his notes, or lend you gas money when you were broke. Nobody envied him because he was still one of them, struggling, relatable, human. But within 3 years, things changed. His company exploded. He got featured in a business magazine, started hiring people our age, and bought a new apartment. That's when the tone around him shifted. Old friends began saying things like, he's changed. Others joked, must be nice having investors' money to play with. Even small gestures, like him offering to pay for dinner, were met with sarcasm. Let the rich guy handle it. The same people who once celebrated him now whispered that he'd gotten lucky, that success made him arrogant. But David hadn't changed at all. What had changed was how his success reflected on them. Psychologists call this social comparison theory, the natural human tendency to measure our worth against others. When someone close to us rises, it threatens the fragile balance of our identity. Their progress feels like our failure. Their light makes our shadows more visible. People rarely envy strangers, they envy proximity. A celebrity's wealth doesn't sting, but your friend's promotion does, because it violates the unspoken contract of equality that makes relationships comfortable. When one person grows, it forces the others to confront what they could have done, but didn't. That's why your success will never be celebrated by everyone who knows you. Some will secretly hope you fall, not out of malice, but out of insecurity. Your growth becomes a mirror they don't want to look into. Marcus Aurelius faced this constantly as emperor. Despite ruling with fairness and humility, he was surrounded by envy, sabotage, and betrayal. Yet he wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." He knew that others' opinions could not touch his inner peace unless he gave them permission. This is the Stoic way. Focus on virtue, not validation. Virtue is your intention. Validation is their reaction. You control the first, never the second. The moment you start adjusting your growth to make others comfortable, you stop growing altogether. David understood this the hard way. At first, he tried to downplay his achievements, dressing modestly, avoiding business talk, paying attention to everyone's comfort. But the envy didn't fade. It grew. The more he tried to shrink, the smaller they expected him to stay. Eventually, he realized, you don't calm envy by apologizing for success. You calm it by outgrowing the need to be understood. When your growth triggers resentment, it's a sign you're evolving faster than your environment. Some people aren't meant to walk every step of your journey. They're lessons in disguise. Their discomfort is proof that you've broken the limits they still obey. If your growth threatens others, you're on the right path, because the moment your improvement stops making people uncomfortable, it probably means you've stopped improving. The Stoic response to envy is not pride, but peace. You don't flaunt your success, but you don't hide it either. You simply continue to build, to learn, to serve your purpose. You understand that envy belongs to those who haven't yet discovered their own path. Seneca faced envy throughout his life, for his wealth, his influence, his intellect. But he never wasted time defending his worth. Instead, he reminded himself daily that external success is meaningless without internal mastery. He wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." That's the paradox. People envy what they think they lack, not realizing that peace, purpose, and discipline can't be taken, only built. So, when people begin to criticize you more loudly, it often means you've started living more truthfully. Let them talk, let them project. You keep walking. Because the higher you climb, the fewer people can breathe at your altitude. Don't slow down to explain. Don't shrink to fit. Don't apologize for working harder, thinking deeper, or aiming higher. You are not responsible for other people's discomfort with your potential. What you are responsible for is using that potential wisely, to grow in character, not ego, to win with dignity, to remain humble, not because the world tells you to, but because your strength no longer depends on their recognition. That is the quiet power of Stoicism, building a fortress within, so external storms can't touch your peace. So, when you feel envy aimed at your progress, smile. It means you're moving beyond the average. And if you ever need a reminder that peace beats praise, remember this. Subscribe to True Stoic Way, not for praise, but for power within. Lesson 5. Everyone is selling something. It started with a message that sounded innocent. "Hey, long time no see, wow. Let's grab coffee and catch up." It was from Jenny, an old classmate I hadn't heard from in years. She was warm, friendly, genuinely curious about my life. We met at a cafe, and for the first half hour, it felt like a real reconnection. Laughter, nostalgia, the comfort of familiarity. Then, the shift happened. "So, I've been working with this amazing company," she said, lowering her voice. "We help people like you create passive income. You'd be perfect for this." And just like that, the mask fell. The conversation I thought was friendship had been a carefully constructed sales funnel. Every question about my job, every compliment, every memory, all leading to a pitch. Jenny wasn't evil. She believed she was offering value. But what I realized that day was a truth most people never see. Every interaction carries an agenda. Some are harmless, some are manipulative, but they're always there. Small gravitational pulls guiding your thoughts, emotions, and decisions. In the modern world, persuasion is everywhere. Your coworker praises your idea because they need your vote in the next meeting. That influencer posting authentic moments isn't just sharing life, they're selling a brand. Even the news headline that makes you angry is selling something: attention. We live inside a marketplace of ideas where every message has a motive and every smile can hide a strategy. But Stoicism doesn't teach paranoia. It teaches awareness. The Stoics understood persuasion thousands of years before marketing existed. They studied logos, not as a sales tool, but as the principle of rational order that guides clear thought. To them, the wise person is one who distinguishes between truth and rhetoric, between reason and manipulation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and around it the seething waters are laid to rest." In other words, let persuasion crash against you, but never control you. Modern society runs on emotional marketing. Companies don't sell products, they sell feelings, belonging, status, security, love. A watch isn't about time, it's about prestige. A car isn't about transport, it's about power. Even self-help influencers sell the promise of being special. The Stoic doesn't reject this system, he sees through it. He asks, what is this person trying to make me think, feel, or do? Then decides consciously whether to engage. This awareness transforms you from a passive consumer into an active observer. When someone compliments you, you notice whether it's genuine or strategic. When an ad promises transformation, you hear the emotional trigger beneath the slogan. When social media tells you what to desire, you pause and ask, do I want this? Or am I being sold it? You start noticing how even relationships trade in invisible currency. Attention, validation, loyalty, admiration. Everyone, consciously or not, is exchanging something of value. Once you understand this, manipulation loses its power. Because persuasion only works when it's unseen. The moment you see it, the illusion breaks. Epictetus taught that clarity of judgment is freedom. He warned against being swept away by appearances, insisting that the wise person examines impressions before accepting them. In today's world, that means learning to decode every message, not with cynicism, but with composure. The Stoic doesn't reject offers, friendships, or opportunities. He simply sees them clearly. He knows every person sells something, an idea, an image, an identity. And that's not wrong. It's human. What's wrong is selling your integrity to buy approval. Because when you can't see the pitch, you become the product. So look closer, listen longer. Ask yourself before every decision, am I choosing this or being persuaded into it? That question alone can save you from years of manipulation and regret. And when you finally see the hidden scripts, the emotional hooks, the polished smiles, you won't grow bitter, you'll grow awake. Once you see the pitch behind every mask, you start living consciously. That's true Stoic way. Lesson 6. Believe what people show you. When I first went into business with Alex, I thought I'd found the perfect partner. He was charismatic, ambitious, and full of big ideas. During our first few months, everything looked flawless. Meetings went well, clients were impressed, and growth seemed inevitable. But beneath that shiny surface, small cracks were forming. He'd take a bit more credit than he deserved in client meetings. He'd pad his expense reports with questionable charges, hotel upgrades, business lunches that looked suspiciously like vacations. He'd promise deadlines to employees and forget them days later. None of it was catastrophic. Just small things, little inconsistencies I brushed aside because I didn't want to seem paranoid or difficult. But here's the truth. Micro-betrayals always precede the big one. 2 years later, I found out Alex had been negotiating to sell the company behind my back. The warning signs had been there all along. I just didn't want to see them. People don't suddenly betray you. They practice in small doses until you've been conditioned to excuse it. They show you who they are, in the tiny cracks of character, long before the earthquake. Maya Angelou said it best. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Marcus Aurelius wrote something similar 2,000 years earlier. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Both understood the same truth. That character is consistent. People don't act out of character, they reveal it gradually. And when we refuse to believe them, it's not because they were deceptive. It's because we were. We deceived ourselves with hope. Hope that they'll change. Hope that they didn't mean it. Hope that next time will be different. But hope without observation is self-inflicted blindness. The Stoic doesn't hope blindly. He watches. He records. He adjusts. Because observation is not judgment. It's awareness. When you see someone lie about small things, it's not harmless. It's a test. When they gossip about others, it's not entertainment. It's data. When they break small promises, it's not forgetfulness. It's a pattern. Character leaves fingerprints everywhere. How someone treats people who can't benefit them. How they react when they don't get their way. How they handle money, pressure, or disappointment. Whether their words match their actions, especially when no one's watching. You don't need to confront every flaw. You simply need to adjust your expectations. Stop expecting loyalty from opportunists, depth from the shallow, or integrity from those who sell convenience. That's not bitterness. It's wisdom. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to expect flaws in others. Begin each day by telling yourself, "Today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. But none of them can harm me." He didn't pray for perfect people, he prepared for real ones. The Stoic practice of observation is simple. Observe, record, adjust. Observe without emotional coloring. Don't rush to judge, just see. Record mentally, or in your journal, what patterns repeat. Adjust your trust, time, and energy accordingly. You don't cut people off in anger. You simply stop investing where the return is corrosion. Because when you ignore the truth of someone's actions, you're not protecting the relationship. You're protecting your illusion of it. Alex wasn't my first betrayal, and he won't be my last. But that experience changed how I see people. Now, I don't react to words. I read behavior. I don't take promises at face value. I measure consistency. And when someone shows me who they are, I believe them the first time. That shift is liberation. You stop taking things personally. You stop internalizing other people's chaos. You stop wasting time fixing what's not your responsibility, because people will always reveal themselves through repetition, not declarations. Your job is not to rewrite them, it's to recognize them. Don't pray for better people. Build better filters. That's how the Stoic protects his peace, not with walls, but with wisdom. He doesn't harden his heart, he sharpens his perception. He learns to love humanity as it is, not as he wishes it to be. Because seeing clearly is a form of compassion. When you stop needing others to be different, you finally start being free. And that freedom, quiet, grounded, and unshakable, is the reward of dangerous intelligence. Lesson 7. Comfort is the enemy of growth. Tom was a brilliant software engineer, sharp, efficient, and admired by everyone in his company. 3 years into his job, he had everything people chase: a great salary, flexible hours, remote work, and total security. Life was smooth. No chaos, no stress, no struggle. But slowly, something started to decay. He wasn't reading as much. His curiosity dulled. The projects that once challenged him now bored him. His conversations grew predictable, his thoughts repetitive. One day, he realized he hadn't done anything truly difficult in years. He had built himself a perfect prison, comfortable, quiet, padded with convenience, and didn't even notice the bars. Then came the shock. The company downsized. Tom lost his job. Overnight, the world that once felt safe became foreign. The industry had evolved. He hadn't. His skills were outdated. His creativity rusted. Comfort had disguised itself as security, but it was really stagnation in disguise. Most people never see this coming because comfort feels like peace, but it's not. Comfort is the slow anesthetic that kills potential. It whispers, "You've earned rest," when what you've really earned is decay. We live in an age addicted to ease. Scroll instead of think. Order instead of cook. Escape instead of endure. Every app, every product, every algorithm is designed to reduce friction, and in doing so, it reduces strength. The Stoics would call this a crisis of the soul. Marcus Aurelius could have ruled from marble halls surrounded by luxury. Instead, he chose to lead armies in the freezing frontiers, writing philosophy in tents under the rain. Seneca was one of the richest men in Rome, yet he practiced sleeping on hard floors and eating coarse bread. Epictetus was a freed slave who deliberately embraced hardship as training for life. Why? Because they knew what modern people forget. Discomfort is the forge of greatness. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, not to suffer, but to stay sharp. They'd expose themselves to hunger, cold, or fatigue to remind the mind that peace doesn't come from comfort, it comes from control. Modern neuroscience supports this ancient wisdom. When you push through discomfort, cold showers, workouts, difficult conversations, your brain releases dopamine after the struggle, not before. That's the biology of growth. Pleasure earned, not given, strengthens both body and mind. But the dopamine loops of modern life, Constant scrolling, instant entertainment, endless convenience invert that process. They give you the reward first and the emptiness after. You feel busy, connected, productive, but nothing inside changes. That's why so many people today are exhausted without effort. They consume energy without creating it. Their bodies are comfortable, but their spirits are starved. Tom learned this the hard way. After losing his job, he decided to rebuild differently. He joined a startup where he had to work harder than ever before. Long hours, tight deadlines, uncertainty. But within months, the fire returned to his mind. He started learning new skills, thinking faster, living deeper. He told me later, comfort had made me weak. Discomfort made me alive again. The Stoic sees challenge as opportunity, not punishment. When life feels difficult, he doesn't ask, why me? He asks, what muscle is this moment training? Because every hardship is a lesson in disguise. Failure trains humility, chaos trains focus, pain trains endurance. The Stoic doesn't fear these, he seeks them. He's not chasing comfort, he's building capacity. So when you find yourself in an uncomfortable season, remember this: you were not built for easy, you were built for excellence. Ease never made anyone wise. Ease never forged character. Ease never carved a legacy. Comfort tells you to stay still. Growth demands you move. And between those two voices, your destiny is decided. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being." He knew that discipline, not desire, keeps the soul alive. So, don't run from the fire. Step into it. That's where your strength is forged. That's where the man you're meant to be begins to take shape. Every challenge you face is a forge. Stay in the fire, true Stoic way. Lesson 8. You're going to die, and most of it doesn't matter. When my uncle was diagnosed with late-stage cancer, everything in his life slowed down. He was only 60, still strong, still planning the next phase of his career. But within weeks of hearing the words terminal, his priorities inverted. Before the diagnosis, his days were filled with noise, work meetings, neighborhood gossip, social media arguments, small anxieties that consumed hours of energy. He cared about how the lawn looked compared to the neighbors, about what people thought of his job title, about whether others noticed his success. But once death sat across from him, all those concerns vanished. The lawn didn't matter. The opinions didn't matter. The titles, the politics, the petty worries, all meaningless. What mattered was presence, the taste of coffee, the sound of laughter, the warmth of people he loved. He stopped trying to impress and started trying to connect. He ended draining relationships without guilt. He started calling friends just to say thank you. And for the first time in decades, he seemed alive. Watching him, I realized something brutal and beautiful. Death clarifies life. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology caught up. They practiced a daily reflection called memento mori. Remember that you will die. It wasn't morbid, it was medicine. It stripped away illusion and left only what was essential. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." He wasn't reminding himself to fear time running out. He was reminding himself to use it. Modern research echoes the same truth. Hospice nurse Bronnie Ware spent years recording the top 5 regrets of the dying, and none of them were about money, status, or recognition. The regrets were heartbreakingly simple. I wish I had lived true to myself. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I'd stayed in touch with friends. I wish I'd allowed myself to be happier. Not one person wished they'd spent more time worrying. Not one regretted failing to impress strangers. Psychologists call this the regret paradox, the awareness that the things we fear losing in life are rarely the things that matter in death. But most people only realize this when it's too late. The Stoic, however, practices death in advance, not to mourn it, but to master it. When you remember death daily, you stop being owned by trivial fears. The anxiety about being liked, the need to prove yourself, the obsession with material success. They dissolve under the weight of impermanence. You start asking sharper questions. If I had 1 year left, would this still matter? Would I still care about this argument? Would I still waste this day on resentment or distraction? And those questions become your compass, because once you see how short life really is, you no longer waste it chasing approval or escaping discomfort. You start living intentionally, choosing purpose over pleasure, depth over distraction, clarity over comfort. My uncle once told me, "It's strange, dying made me stop being afraid." He wasn't at peace because he accepted death. He was at peace because he finally started living. He spent his last months doing simple things, reading under sunlight, sharing stories, watching his family laugh. There was no fear left, only gratitude. It was as if he had been freed from the illusion that tomorrow was guaranteed. And that's what Memento Mori is meant to do. It doesn't make you fearful of death. It makes you fearless in life. Every time you remember that you will die, you see more clearly how much of your worry is meaningless. The traffic jam, the social rejection, the failed plan, none of it will matter when your time runs out. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. Death is not the enemy. Forgetfulness is. Forgetting that your time is finite is how you waste it. Forgetting that people you love won't be here forever is how you take them for granted. Forgetting that your next breath isn't promised is how you drift through life half asleep." The Stoic lives differently. He greets each morning as a gift, not an entitlement. He speaks truth now, not later. He forgives quickly, loves deeply, and works with purpose, because he knows the clock is always ticking, and that awareness makes every moment sacred. So pause and ask yourself, if this were your final year, how differently would you live? Who would you forgive? What would you stop chasing? What would you finally start doing? You don't need a diagnosis to wake up. You just need courage, the courage to remember. You can waste your life seeking comfort, or you can live with clarity and courage. Choose the path of truth. Subscribe to True Stoic Way. These 8 lessons aren't about becoming ruthless. They're about becoming real. Each one strips away a layer of illusion until only truth remains. You learn that emotions rule the majority, but you can rule yourself. That people act from self-interest, but you can align yours with virtue. That most avoid truth, but you can face it without flinching. You realize your success will invite envy, yet you stay centered. You see manipulation everywhere, but instead of fearing it, you understand it. You learn to judge character through patterns, not promises. You embrace discomfort as your teacher. And finally, you remember that death is the mirror that puts every fear, every desire, every illusion into perspective. This is the path of dangerous intelligence, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that frees you from control. When you see through emotion, you become calm. When you see through self-interest, you become strategic. When you see through falsehood, you become honest. When you see through envy, you become free. When you see through manipulation, you become sovereign. When you see through character, you become wise. When you see through comfort, you become strong. And when you see through mortality, you finally start to live. That's the hidden thread connecting all 8 lessons. Perception, the ability to look at life as it is, not as you wish it to be. To face the storm with eyes open, to love people without expecting perfection, to build discipline instead of excuses, and to walk through chaos with composure. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That's what it means to live the Stoic way. To take back the power you've been giving away. The truth will cost you comfort, but it will give you freedom. When you see truth clearly and act with virtue, the world cannot manipulate you. That is dangerous intelligence. And if you're ready to walk this path of truth and self-mastery, join the brotherhood. Subscribe to True Stoic Way and rise above the noise.